Hello guys, good day and welcome to this video. In this video I'll be talking about Git and GitHub. So what is Git? I'm sure I've been hearing about Git, but there's a difference between Git and GitHub. Okay, so Git is actually a distribution or a distributed version control system that tracks version files. Okay, so with GitHub you'll be able to integrate certain things like moving files from your computer to the GitHub repository. Okay, so that could be done, by Git, which is a version control system. So we'll be going into that. We'll be using the command line interface or the terminal to do that. Okay, so what is GitHub? GitHub is simply a developer platform that allows developers create, store, manage, and share their code. Okay, so with GitHub, you'll be able to see other developers' code. You'll be able to store your code where other developers or employers can see your code or your past project. Okay, so it's a very rich platform that developers have used or that is made for developers to store your code, manage your code, and edit your code or update your code. It's also useful when you're working with a team of other developers, creating branches and creating other rich resources to you know integrate and share your code with other developers. So there are a few commands in GitHub. These are just a few commands. So these commands are able to create, read, delete, update in a GitHub repository. So GitHub repositories are simply where your projects are stored. Okay, so I'll be going into the GitHub platform very soon after this introduction. So we can always see how we could create a repository or delete a repository or commit a repository. So here are a few of the commands: commit, pull, push, etc. So I'll be going into the platform and seeing how we could do these things from the GitHub, and also using the command line or the terminal, using the Git version control system. So these are one of the version control systems that could be used to start an init or initialization, which is the short form for init, uh, in the local directory that's from your system. So this is the first command we use to make sure that we have initialized Git before we push it into the GitHub and add in the staging area and the rest of them. So we have also Git status. This is a command you can use to track your files in the working area. Don't worry if you don't understand. We'll be going into the command line or the terminal very soon, and we'll see the purpose of the Git status. So Git status is just used to track files in the working area after the initialization. Okay, so we have another one, Git add. So this is to add files to the staging area after we have used the Git status to know which files are in the staging area or not in the staging area. Okay, so we have the Git add to add files to the staging area. So these commands are very necessary. That's why I'm going through them, so that you won't be lost when we are adding them to the repository or connecting the GitHub down to a local repository or directory. Git commit is used to commit our file or project to ready for putting it up into the GitHub using the version control system. Okay, Git log is to see how many commits you have made. Git differ or Git differ is to see the difference between files you have committed and modified. Okay, Git checkout is to track back or to roll back a version of a file. So okay, take example, if we create something index.html or txt file, and or we make an edit to it, we can always use the Git checkout to erase that edit, okay, from the last commit. So adding to GitHub, what I've been talking about here is using the version control to initialize the Git and to put it in the staging area and the commits also. So adding to GitHub, we need to create an account, we need to create a repository, copy the URL, and also recommended to download the GitHub for laptop and desktop to avoid any discrepancies. Git remote. This is the first stage in adding the GitHub through the command line, or adding to GitHub through the command line interface of the terminal. And using the Git remote origin URL of repository. So after this whole presentation, I'll be going into GitHub so that there will be more clarity in whatever I'm doing here. So we have the Git push. This is how to push repository, or how to push directory into repository. So directory are your local folders, repository are your remote folders in GitHub where the project is housed. Okay, so we use the git push u origin master. Master is just simply the name of the branch. You can use main to replace the master. Git ignore. So any file you want to be ignored by git, you can use the git ignore. Remove files from the staging area. We can use git rm cached and r. Okay, and the name of the file. Okay. Git clone. This is a way of duplicating files from any repository, okay, or from any repository or your personal repository. Okay, creating a new branch in Git. Now what was known by branch is a way of creating sections of your project. Okay, so if you have a main project and let's say one is a front end and the other one is a back end, for example, so you can create a branch for the back end, or you can create a branch for a section of developers. So one of the ways to create a branch is using git branch plot. Okay, the plot is just the name of the branch. Okay, so you can use any branch name. You can use git branch new, git branch old, git branch David, git branch Clement. Okay, you can use any name for the branch. So to switch a branch, so take example, I've created a branch name, so we can just use git checkout plot. Okay, so we've switched to the plot branch. Okay, so we can say git checkout main. We have switched to the main branch. Okay, so merge to main branch. Okay, so we can say git merge and branch name. Okay, so I know you guys don't really understand what is going on here. I just want to go over this so that we would not be lost when we go into the terminal. Okay, so I will also be making this slide available so that you can go through it and be familiar with whatever is going on here. Okay, so now there's a default readme file. Okay, so the readme file is simply like a txt file when we are making a normal local development through VS Code. So the readme file in GitHub is just simply to give a comment on what the project is all about. You can basically put anything in the comment or the readme file, but it's basically to just house what the project is all about, or descriptions of the project. Last but not the least, we have forking. So forking is a way to clone other people's project into your own repository or your own profile. So we'll be signing out to GitHub, and we'll be using all this terms here. We'll be using all these commands here. We'll be using all these features here in this small slide. So let's head onto the GitHub. So GitHub, like I said, is a platform for developers to create, read, and update their code, and it's very, very necessary because it's open source, and you get to show your employers what you have done, and get to show employer what you have done, get to show clients project you have done in the past, and it's also very rich in its resources due to the fact you have other developers there. You can clone, you can learn, you can get ideas for projects, you can ask questions, you can search for basically anything or any similar project you want to build. So let's head on to the GitHub platform and sign up and put on what we have learned here, or what is in this slide. Okay guys, this is the GitHub platform. You guys go to github.com and you go to sign up, of course. Okay, so you put your email, Okay, guys, so I've signed up for the GitHub. You can just skip all this. Okay, so we have a plan here, and I'll just choose the free. Okay, so we are currently, in our homepage, or the homepage of GitHub. Okay, so I made mention of what a repository is. A repository is where we have our folders, okay, where we store our project folders, and you can view your profile. So I don't have it, since it's a new account. I don't have any repository yet. I personally created this account for um, this tutorial. So to create a repository, normally it doesn't show here, but you can create a repository here through this button here. But you can normally come to your folder here and go to your repository, okay, and click on new, or you can come to the home page just in case the website is modified. Okay, so you create the repository here. If you want to create a new folder, and you put a name of the repository and check if the name is available. So I would just say sample repository. Okay, so we can say the name is available. Description of the repository, I can say sample or for tutorial purposes. Okay, so you also choose whether it's a public or private repository. So I want to make it public, and you also choose if you want to add a readme file or not, but I'll choose to add a readme file, and that's it. You create a repository. So our repository is created. Okay, we can either add files by uploading files. We can either add files to our repository by uploading files, or we can either create the files here. Okay, so take example, I want to create a new file. I just want to create a simple index.html. So we name the file here and we'll say index.html. Okay, now I may mention that commit changes is how to create change, okay, how to save change. So I've created a file here, and I'll just commit the changes, and I can put a description. I can say test HTML file. Okay, commit to the main branch. So by default, the GitHub, you have a branch known as main. Okay, so I'll commit the changes, and that's it. So I can actually modify this HTML file. Okay, I can click on edit this file, and I can just say HTML, and I can say head, I can say title, I can say sample file page, for example, and I can also say body. I can just say h1. This is a sample repository for tutorials. Okay, and I commit the changes. So for each comment, we can choose to add a comment. Okay, so I can say second commit. Okay, so commit is like saving changes. Okay, so we are saving and we have a commit. Okay, so we click on the sample repository and we have just one file here. Okay, and this is our readme file. We can use to add a brief description of the project, or we can add instructions on what how to go about the project, either installing the database, or when our project is complete, the first steps in making the project more viable. Okay, so there are a lot of things you can do here. You can choose to pull, you can choose to open it with GitHub desktop, you can choose to download this repository. I can click on download, You can choose to add new files. Let's try and upload the file. So to upload the file into the repository or into the folder, we can go to our desktop, and we can say desktop, let's say JavaScript. So I can choose to, let's say, upload this random CSS file here, and we can commit changes. I can say uploaded CSS file. Okay, commit to main branch or create a new branch. Add files we upload. So I commit the changes. So it'll take a few seconds, and our CSS file has been added. Okay, so you can choose to add, your files manually like this, or you can choose to use the terminal. Okay, so I've showed you guys how to add the files manually, like uploading the CSS file, or we can choose to use the terminal. Okay, so I also made mention of how to fork a project. F-O-R-K, forking a project. So forking a project, it's simply cloning a project to your own repository, your own list of repository. Okay, not cloning a project to your local computer or your local directory. So we go to our repository, we can see we have just one repository here. Okay, sample repository. So if we come here, and we can just search for basically anything on GitHub. So I can say blog website, for example, blog website, and I want to fork this project. So you can see SEO socket blog website. I can even scroll down and say, okay, I want a website on PHP, or we can say social media website, Laravel blog. So let me just clone this, or let me fork something we have done. Let me fork a language we have done, that I can say JavaScript. So this is JavaScript, so this is stand blog. Okay, so I can fork. You can see two people have already forked this project. Okay, so I can choose to fork it just by clicking it. Okay, I can change the name, or let me just leave it as it is, and I'll create the fork. So now, after we are done creating the fork, I will go back to our repository. We can then see that we have the project now in our repository, in our list of repository. Okay, so we have this stand blog here in our list of repository. Okay, so it's just a very simple process, and we can also delete our repository by simply we can add files, we can also delete okay, we can delete our repository by going to settings and scrolling down, and clicking this button. We can simply delete our repository. I want to delete this repository. Well, I don't want to delete it since we just have this single repository, but clicking on this will just simply delete our repository. Okay, so remember, deleting the repository, we can simply come to settings and scroll down, and delete this repository. Okay, so it's just as simple as that. Knowing the themes, using the poll to pull down repository, or using the pull request and all that, and checking on our project. There's also a way to host your repository, to host your website, okay, through GitHub pages. Okay, there's also a way to host your website through GitHub pages. So after we finish with the command line, I will be coming back to show you guys how to host your website through GitHub pages. Okay, it's just a very simple process, and if I put it right now, there's nothing that's going to be showing because we just have a single h1 element in our repository. So we can come here, the GitHub pages, and deploy from my branch, save. main branch, and we'll save. Nope. Okay, so now guys, I'm going to be heading back to uh, our folder, and we'll be using the command line to add and create and initialize in our repository. So GitHub is just a very straightforward process, and let's head over to our folder, our local repository or our local directory, and create an initialization to GitHub. Okay, before we head over to um, our local directory, so our site here is live. I wanted to just so our site here is live. I wanted to make the site more um, you know more meaningful, but we can see we have our site live, and this is our GitHub username, GitHub URL, and the name of the repository. Okay, so that's how it's going to be when you're hosting. So this provides a free hosting if you want to have a portfolio website you have deployed to GitHub and all that. Okay, so I didn't want to do this, but I noticed the GitHub site became live, and so that's it. So we head over to the local repository now. Okay guys, we're in the terminal now, and I want to create a folder through the terminal. I believe in the previous video we have gone through how to create a folder through the terminal. So I'll just navigate to the desktop, and I will say cd desktop. Okay, so we're in the desktop. So I will simply just create a folder now. I will say mkdir. I can call this sample git. Okay, so I've created a folder, and I will try and go into the folder now. I can say sample cd sample. Oh, so I'm into the folder now. So for this tutorial, I would be creating two files. Okay, just two txt file. So remember how we created a file, or how we created a file through the command line interface in the previous video using echo. So I'll just be creating two txt files. So I'll say echo. I will say file 1.txt. I've created a file, and I will say echo file 2.txt. Okay, so I made mention in the slides that the first thing we do when we want to incorporate GitHub into our local repository before we push it into GitHub through the command line or the terminal, it's initializing the GitHub. Okay, initializing the GitHub. So to initialize, you simply use git init. Okay, so this would install. Okay, so we have initialized the git repository. The first git repository, we have initialized the git repository. So what initialization does is that it possibly installs the right background dependencies for pushing GitHub, or for carrying out GitHub commands, or for carrying out git commands. Okay, to carrying out git commands. Okay, so the next thing we can do is to use git status to check the staging area. Okay, so now the staging area is simply sample. Are we in the wrong place? Okay, let's check the file. Sample git. Oh, I went into the wrong file here. Sample. We're supposed to go into sample git. Okay, so I will simply go out from sample and get into sample git. Sorry about that, guys. Oh, sorry about that, guys. Sorry about that. So we I made a mistake and going into sample instead of sample JIT. Okay, so I'll just be creating I'll be creating the txt files again, or let me just simply use this JIT init. Okay, initialize empty. Okay, and I simply go into JIT, creating the echo files, file1.txt, echo file2.txt. okay, so now I go into the staging area by using JIT status. Okay, so now I made mention of the staging area as an area where you track files you want to add before you commit. Okay, so these files are possibly empty. We can simply add some text into the file 1 and some text into the file 2. So for this I'll just be using notepad, and I can say notepad file1.txt. so you should open notepad, echo is on. I'll just simply add this is a file 1 for JIT. Okay, I save it and open notepad, file2.txt. I would say this is a file 2 for JIT. Okay, so I'll check the staging area again. I'll say JIT status. You can see these are still on track. Now to add to use JIT add before we commit, we need to use a command known as JIT add. Okay, so this will get it tracked from the staging area. So I say JIT add. If you want to add these two files at the same time, you simply use a dot. Okay, but if you want to add one at a time, you simply name the file. Okay, I'll say JIT add file1.txt. okay, so if I go to JIT status now, you see that file 1 has been added before the commit, and file 2 has not been added. Okay, so I can say JIT status, so you can see, okay, changes to be committed. So this has been added to the staging area and this has not been added. Okay, so let's just add the two. So I'll say JIT add file2.txt. okay, so we can see, so if we say JIT status, we can see both of them have been added. Okay, both of them have been added. So now we have added it into the staging area. Okay, we have added it into the staging area and we can now try to commit it. Okay, so when we commit it, we need to also add a message. Okay, so I can say JIT commit. Let's say I want to add the first one. I can say there's a message, and I can say this is the first commit. Okay, enter. So we can see that we have tried to add we have tried to commit this, okay, into our local repository. Okay, so we need to see the list of commits that we have made. We can simply use a command known as git log. Okay, so Clemendio Jr. This is when we made the commit. Okay, and we can also see the difference between the files we have committed using git diff. Okay, these were all the things we did in the slide. Okay, so git diff, so we don't have any difference for now. And I would also make mention, okay, so I can say notepad, let's open the first one, file1.txt. So this is the file 1 for Git, and I can say and also a newer version. Okay, I save. So if I were to open this again, notepad file1.txt, just to confirm, this is what we have. This is a file 1 for Git and also a newer version. Now I made mention in the slide that there's a way to reverse data to the previous version using Git checkout. Okay, so we'll be using that right now. Okay, so I can say Git checkout file1.txt. So we have updated this. Now if we were to open this file1.txt, we'll see that the previous version has been restored. Okay, so this is a file 1 for Git and no newer version is there. Okay, so that's one of the ways to, or that's a way to reverse any changes we have made to a particular file. Okay, so let's check our status again. Okay, let's check our difference, git diff. Okay, so now we have created our init. We have created some files. I've created two files here, file1.txt and file2.txt. okay, how do we push this into a repository in GitHub? Okay, first of all, I want you guys to install GitHub for desktop. Okay, I want you guys to install GitHub for desktop. This is how it looks like. Okay, or we can simply go to the GitHub website and get GitHub for desktop. Okay, or let's just go to Google and say download GitHub for desktop. Now when you download GitHub for desktop, it would synchronize with your local repository. Okay, this is for 64-bit. Okay, so it looks like this. Because we're supposed to add some test keys and public keys or private keys, but if you add the GitHub for desktop, you don't need to do all that. Okay, so you just download the GitHub for desktop and open it up and input your details. Okay, so at the end of the day, this is what the GitHub for desktop looks like. Everything that has been published in your repository would also be here. Okay, this is another of my account. That's why it carries this junior. This was 6 months ago. So just make sure you have the GitHub for desktop and you sign in. Okay, and you sign in. Okay, and you sign in. So this will help in the authentication of your private keys or public keys, or whatever is required. Okay, that's one of the ways to get all that. Okay, so now I want to push these two files I've created here, file 1 and file2.txt, file1.txt and file2.txt. What do? I go to the repository I want to create, I want to push it to. Okay, in that case is this new repository we created here, sample repository. And what do? I copy the URL, okay, of this repository. I copy the URL of this repository. Okay, and I go back. Okay, I go back and I say git remote add origin and the URL of the repository. Okay. Okay, so after that, to push this repository to the remote repository, we simply use git push u origin master. Okay, so this is coming from origin does not appear to have Git repository and all that. Okay. Okay guys, to correct that, I initially had my original account here synchronized with my GitHub local repository. So I copy this and I go through the process again. Okay, so I go to the process, I say git remote add origin and URL. Okay, so I can say git push yo origin master. Okay, so I've had this pushed into my GitHub, okay, into the GitHub that we created, into the GitHub repository that we created. So there's the first process, git remote add origin. I add the origin of the repository, and we say git push u origin master. Okay, so it's a very simple process, and we can go back and we can see we have recent pushes to May 16. Okay, compare. Okay, this is a file for GitHub 1 and this is the file for GitHub 2. Okay, so these are the two files we created here from our local repository. Okay, so you can see GitHub and Git is a very simple process, and we can simply use it to our own advantage. If you're working with a firm, or you're working with privately an organization, or you're consulting, okay, or you want to show other developers your code, and you can also add this manually. Okay, so aside that, we have successfully pushed our repository from a local directory to a remote repository. Okay, so I made mention of creating another branch, okay, in GitHub. So to create another branch in GitHub, take example, you have another member of the team and you want to create a branch for somebody else, or you want to create a branch for, let's say, the data team, data analysis team. You can create a branch known as data analysis, for example. Okay, I can say git branch, and the name of the branch you want to create, I can say data analysis. Okay, so we have successfully created a branch. Okay, so to know the branches that you have in a team, let me even create another branch here. I can say data, I can just say data. So to know the amount of branches you have, you can say git branch. So you can see the number of branches you have here. You have data branch, you have data analysis branch, and you have master branch. Okay, so to know the branch you have, or to switch to another branch in GitHub, it's quite simple. You can say git checkout and the name of the branch. Okay, so we have successfully switched to the data branch. Okay, so if we say git branch now anyone showing in green, or depending on the terminal you're using, would is the live branch that you're using right now. Okay, so we're in the data branch. Okay, we're in the data branch. Okay, we're in the data branch. So that's it for GitHub, and let me even show you guys how to use the git pull. Before I show you guys how to use the git pull, let me show you guys how to merge a branch. Okay, so to merge a branch, take example, you're finished working on various projects from the other team. Let's check our branch first. So we're in the data branch now. So to merge a branch, I would simply switch to the default branch, check out master. Okay, so we are switched to master. So to merge a branch, you simply use a command known as git merge. Okay, git merge, and the branch name you want to merge. So I want to merge data. So already up to date. So git branch. So take example, I've not put anything into these two branches. I've not put any file. I've not put anything. But if we were to merge a branch, this is the command we're going to use. Okay. First of all, it has to be in the default branch, and you see git merge, and you put the branch you want to merge. Okay. So that's it. So take example, you want to pull. You want to. I'll show you guys how to delete. You want to have a pull request. You can simply compose new pull request. So you can pull any data of your choice. You can pull this data we have just added, and you know, that's it. So GitHub is a very straightforward process, and you know, this is my original account aside the one I created for this tutorial, and this is what I use to connect to the repository, because it's also linked to my GitHub. For desktop here, I was having issues with my original account, or sorry, the account I created, so I had to switch to this my original account, and I see I have a total of 33 repositories here, and I also have a samples file I created, you know, for this tutorial. Okay, so guys, this is all for GitHub. If you have any issues, let me know. If you don't really understand the entire video, please go over it. I feel you only need maybe 4 commands in GitHub, but go over all the commands and practice more, and watch the video over and over again for you to understand. If you don't if you have any issues, feel free to contact me, but GitHub is a simply straightforward process. Thank you very much, and you know, see you in the next video.